Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Dr. Bautista. Today, I was assigned to report about the Chapter 6 Human Resource Decision Making in Organization with the topic of Managing Termination and Retention. Today, the title of my report will be Managing Employees' Termination and Retention. For today's discussion, our learning objectives are the following. Explain how the employee retention and separation align with overall HR strategy. Explain the employee turnover process and describe methods that an organization can use to reduce undesirable turnover. Discuss the potential benefits and problems associated with employee layoffs. Describe effective methods of employee discipline process and the action of progressive discipline. And last is describe effective methods for dismissing employees from an organization. It is very difficult for HR professionals to terminate an employee because they see it is a failure in doing their jobs. As Angelo Dinesi said, anytime an employee is terminated, it represents a failure of some part of HR system. So let me discuss first about managing termination. Termination is the process of firing an employee because of poor job performance, unacceptable behavior, or interpersonal problem. Termination is regarded as the last alternative. It represents a failure in stopping and in managing ineffective performance. Nevertheless, to maintain discipline and control costs, a firm is often forced to terminate non-productive employees. When the substandard performers are discharged, it communicates the message that adequate performance must be maintained. Thus, a firing can also be valuable because it may increase the productivity of employees who are not fired. There are types of termination. The first one is the voluntary termination. The second is involuntary termination. And last is termination of mutual agreement. So what is voluntary termination? Voluntary termination is a decision made by the employee to leave the job, such as a decision commonly known as resignation, quitting, leaving, or giving notice. Next termination is the involuntary termination. Involuntary termination is the employee's departure at the hands of the employer. There are two basic types of involuntary termination, known often as being fired or laid off. Let's talk about dismissal, layoff, and probational period. Dismissal is where employer choose to require the employee to leave, generally for a reason which is the fault of the employee. Layoff, a less severe for a involuntary termination, is often referred as a layoff. Often layoffs occur as a result of downsizing. And last is probational period, in which both employee and employer reach an agreement that the employer is allowed to lay off the employee if the probational period is not satisfied. The last type of termination is the termination by mutual agreement. This type of termination has sometimes happened when both sides agree to do something. Example of this is internship, an end employment contract for a specified period of time only, and mandatory retirement is some occupations such as commercial airline pilots need to face the mandatory retirement as a certain age force resignation. Managing involuntary termination. Whenever an employee terminated, it represents a failure of some part of human resource system. It also means that the firm will have to expend money to recruit, hire, and train a replacement. Therefore, termination is an action of last resort. Here are the reasons why we need to manage the involuntary termination. Number one is lack of ability. The most common reason for an employee who cannot perform up to standard is a lack of ability. In this case, the hiring decision was an error and the employee should be terminated and reassigned to another job. Next is failure of training. An employee may have the potential to perform effectively, but a failure of training may make him or her unable to do so. In this case, more training or reassignment to a supervisor who is skilled at employee development may be appropriate. Next is physical or psychological problems. An employee may also be ineffective due to physical or psychological problems, and assistance from the organization may improve the situation. For example is Employee Assistance Program, EAPS, are used by many organizations to aid workers with issues related to alcoholism, drugs, and mental health issues. EAP can also help employees become more productive more quickly, and they can also help the employees make the most effective use of employee health insurance plans. The next topic is about progressive discipline. This topic is all about the punishment and discipline. Punishment refers to the following unacceptable behavior with some type of negative consequences. Discipline refers to the system of how rules and procedures for how and when that punishment is administered and how severe the punishment should be. Progressive discipline plans. These are the organizational disciplinary programs where the severity of punishment increase over time or across the seriousness of the problem. Progressive discipline plans can be used to deal with almost any type infractions. Next is the steps in progressive discipline plan. The cause of termination must be identified, and proper documentation must be completed. Necessary approvals for termination must be obtained and termination package documents compiled. So here are the steps in progressive discipline plan. The first step is progressive discipline plan is a verbal warning. A caution conveyed orally to the employee. The second step is written warning. More formal than a verbal warning, written warnings are given to the employees in writing and become part of the employee's permanent record. The third step is about in both verbal and written warnings, supervisors should suggest what and ways the worker can correct the problem, including a referral to assistance program if appropriate. Next step is suspension. A temporary layoff is often the next step. Suspension usually lasts for one or few days. The suspension may be with or more commonly without pay. This step is intended to impress the employee with the employer's willingness to impose punishment. If ever the employee do something wrong, termination will be the final step and should be taken only when the organization is sure that the employee is not salvageable. The next topic is about managing retention. Retention. For my own view, retention is a set of action to make an employee remain in the company or in the organization. Today, companies must also focus on keeping good employees and by eliminating poor performing individuals and retaining high performers. An organization can be successful in a long run. Retaining good employees is particularly important for gaining competitive advantage from others. So what are the importance of staff retention? Staff retention is important because it is the key skills, idea, knowledge, and experience remain within the organization. Conversely, they don't transfer to other organizations. And last is to prevent direct or indirect financial loss. In managing voluntary turnover, we should understand the turnover process. Although the truth is more complicated, a simple view says that if workers are satisfied, turnover will be decreased. As what you see in the pictures, you can see a model of the turnover process. Start from experienced job dissatisfaction until the end of quitting the job. So here is my explanation. One important factors in the level of unemployment in the economy. Workers are unlikely to leave even if very dissatisfied unless they can find another job. Thus, some turnover models emphasize that dissatisfaction's first result is that workers will think about looking for alternative employment. The workers will actually leave only if more favorable alternative found. Other turnover models propose that dissatisfaction must reach a certain level before search for an alternative occur, and that once that level is reached, it's too late. Another model proposed that a primary mechanism in turnover is shock, a positive or negative significant event that causes the employee to rethink his or her career path and role in the organization. So why employees need to leave the company or the organization? According to Inc.com, almost 60% of the survey employees leave the company or not staying long is because of the following reasons. Job is not what the employee expected to be. Job and person mismatch. No growth opportunities. Lack of appreciation. Lack of trust and support in co-workers, seniors, and management. Stress from overwork and work-life imbalance. The compensation or the salary. New job offer. Fear of anticipated involuntary termination. Early retirement. Environment, and more reasons why. In addition to increased turnover, job dissatisfaction has other undesirable effects. Number one, job dissatisfaction can lead to increased absenteeism. Next is dissatisfied employees are more likely to join different unions. Next is dissatisfied employees display fewer organizational citizenship behaviors. Next is job dissatisfaction is linked to stress, job burnout, and employee health. And last is no consistent relationship between job satisfaction and productivity has ever been clearly indicated. We can measure the job satisfaction of an employee by using the attitude survey and the own survey or standard survey. Attitude surveys are usually conducted on a regular basis, are the most common method of the monitoring employee satisfaction. In others, some organizations use their own survey, but using standard survey allows the firms to compare their results to those of other organizations. Example of this is the job descriptive index, means that most commonly used standard measure of the satisfaction. It measures satisfied for each aspect of the job such as the pay. And using other instruments include more direct and overall measures. Some compare the current level of job satisfaction to the desired level. For the last topic, employee retention strategies. One of the most important retention strategies that the management should practice are the following: hire the right people in the first place, empower the employees, make employees realize that they are the most valuable asset of the organization, have faith in them, trust them, and respect them. Next is provide them information and knowledge, keep providing them feedback on their performance, record and appreciate their achievements, keep their morale high, create an environment where the employees want to work and have fun. That's all, and thank you for listening. This is James Edwin Polanco reporting.